Welcome to another video from Creativo Solutions. You're watching the Accounting for Non-Accountants video series. I hope these videos are helping you better understand the basics so you can apply your accounting. Please subscribe to this channel and visit the website for more information, content and resources to help you. We are now going to be looking at the trial balance in more detail, and I'm going to be focusing on application more so in this video than in the ones before, because we've covered all the basic rules and we've looked at definitions relating to all the different accounting elements. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to apply the rules in more detail when looking at actual balances. We know the trial balance is required in order to check that your debits are equal to your credits. We know the accounting rule is important. Every debit must have a credit. So before drawing up a set of financial statements, we need to make sure that the rule has been followed. It doesn't matter what you're going to be doing. The accounting rules are always going to stay the same. Those are the universal rules that we can use in any application. So remember to always identify what type of account you're dealing with. If you know what the account is in terms of its element, you'll be able to then apply the rules in different scenarios. We can look at a whole host of different applications. It can be journals, ledger, accounting equation, financial statement disclosure. It's endless in terms of what we can do with these basic accounting rules. As long as you understand the basic rules, you can then apply them in different situations. My technique when approaching any accounting course, it's always to keep it as simple as possible. So I've been helping students with all different modules ranging from first year and looking at other applications as well in other areas based on accounting, and I always keep it as simple as possible. The simpler you keep it, the easier it is, and we can always apply the basic principles. Principles is how I approach studying and learning. Okay, for the students that I assist, it's because it's the best way to approach anything. If you know what the basics are and you understand what the basics are in terms of the rules, application is very, very simple. In all subjects, there's always going to be key principles that you need to learn and understand. Understanding is better than memorizing a whole host of different facts. So that's the approach, and I'm going to show you how to look at the actual accounting rules. We first need to know what the rules are. So just to recap, for those of you that haven't watched the video, please go back and look at video 6 in the series. Video 6 in the series covers all the golden rules, and that will give you all the information that you need to remember what they are in order to apply them in different situations. For this particular video, we'll look at the trial balance application. We know the rules come from IFRS. We've discussed what that is in the past. We know it's the rule book that allows us to apply accounting in different scenarios so we can all understand the language. Remember, the debit is the left and the credit is the right. And then we've got either an increase or a decrease depending on what we're going to be focusing on. In this application, we're focusing on balances. Okay, so obviously I've highlighted the plus because balances are recorded on the positive side for these accounts. So the first account that we need to recap is an asset. An asset will have a debit, okay, plus, and a credit minus. A liability is the opposite, so you'll have a credit plus and a debit minus. We then have income, credit plus, debit minus, and the opposite of income is an expense, debit plus, credit minus. And then we've got two special accounts which are easy to remember because the word actually gives us the answer in terms of the rule. Capital starts with the C and credit starts with the C, so the plus is on the credit side of capital. Drawing starts with the D and debit starts with the D, so debit drawings has the plus. So those are the 6 accounting rules that we need to be familiar with, and now we can approach the actual accounting application. In this particular example, we're going to be focusing on balances. So we're looking at the trial balance and we're asking the question, what balances are they going to have? So when approaching this in a test or an exam, it doesn't matter what the application is. This could be part of a journal question, it could be part of a ledger question, it could be part of a disclosure question where we need to make certain adjustments. It doesn't matter how simple or complex the question is, we need to know what these accounts are. So let's go down the list together and I will give you some revision in terms of what we've covered before in terms of definitions. I'm going to recap that as well. If you haven't gone through those videos and you don't know what the definitions are, you do need to start there, because approaching this without knowledge about the definitions or the fundamentals is not going to help you at all going forward if you're going to be studying more accounting. So this is how I'm going to approach it. If I take the first account, the account is called Land and Buildings. So now I need to think about what I've learnt before. Okay, so land and buildings I know is a resource. That's the keyword that I'm pulling out from my knowledge of the rules. So if I know land and buildings is a resource, I now know it meets the definition of an asset. If land and buildings is an asset, well, where am I going to show the plus? It's going to be on the debit, and that's where the balance would be for that particular asset. Next is sales. What is sales? Sales is an inflow of benefit which meets the definition of income. So now I know what it is. If I know what it is, I can then look at where the balance will go. Income will have a balance on the credit side. Bank overdraft, apply the accounting element. Think about your definitions and identify which one does it meet. Well, if I have a bank overdraft, I've overdrawn from the bank account, meaning I've taken more from the bank. If I take more from the bank, I owe the bank. There's an obligation to pay the bank back for an additional amount that you've withdrawn from your bank account on top of what you currently had in the bank. So a bank overdraft would meet the definition of a liability because it's an obligation that will give rise to a future outflow of economic benefit. If I know bank overdraft is a liability, then I'll know the balance will go on the plus side, and a plus side for a liability is on the credit. Next is stationery. Again, identify what it is. Stationery, well, is something that I'm going to be purchasing, that I'm going to be using as part of the day-to-day running of the business. So stationery would meet the definition of an expense, an outflow of benefit. I've bought something that I'm going to be using in the business. Stationery would therefore be a debit. Why? Because expenses have a plus on the debit side. It meets that definition, and therefore it will have that balance. A loan from a bank. A loan is an obligation. It meets the definition of a liability. So now I know what it is. If I know what it is, I then just need to apply the rule. So when looking at a liability, the plus is on the credit, and therefore a loan from a bank will go on that particular side. A debtor. We've briefly discussed this before, so I'm just going to add a bit more depth now when discussing it. Let's think about a business selling on credit. If a business sells on credit, they're going to have a customer who owes them. And if our perspective is from the business, the debtor is the customer that's going to pay us in the future. So from the business's point of view, the business will receive benefit from the debtor in the future. So that currently now as it stands is a resource that we control. We have a customer who owes us, and that would be viewed as a resource because we're going to get something from them in the future. So a debtor ABC would meet the definition of a resource, which we now know is an asset. If we know it's an asset because that's the accounting element, I then look at the rule. Assets will have a balance on the positive side being the debit. Vehicles. Again, you need to identify what it is. So a vehicle is something we have. Okay, we control it, we possess it. It's ours, it's a resource. So a vehicle is a resource. If it's a resource and we have it in the business, that would meet the definition of an asset. So if vehicles is an asset, I then just look at the rule and I know assets will have a balance on the plus for that particular account, and therefore the vehicles would have a debit balance. Next is creditors, or creditor XYZ. Creditor XYZ, let's think about this. Well, when does a creditor arise? It arises when I purchase from someone on credit. So as the business, I'm going to be buying goods from a particular supplier in this case XYZ. If I'm buying on credit from XYZ, that means I've purchased today and I'm going to pay in the future. So what definition does that meet? Well, you should be thinking about an obligation. A creditor would be an obligation because I'm going to have to pay them in the future. So I'm going to then identify creditor XYZ as a liability because obligation gives me liability, and if I know it's a liability, I know it'll have a plus on the credit side. So creditors will have a balance on the credits. The last one is interest income. Some accounts are going to be as easy as that to identify because the word income is there already. So you already know that this is income and it meets that definition in terms of its element. So I just need to identify, well, which side will an income have a balance on? Well, the answer is a credit side. And that takes us to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel and post your comments below. Tell me which sections you've covered before that have helped you. And if you do need me to create more videos on content that you're wanting me to produce, let me know and I'll create the video to help you.